Hi, Max Brantley with the Arkansas Times. Friday, August 7th, news from Arkansas. Were you, like everybody else, a bigger crowd than even for an NBA playoff game, watched the 10 top Republican candidates for president debate last night on Fox News 2? I did as well. I don't know if I'll get those 2 hours back, but it had its moments. Everybody's still talking about Donald Trump. From where I sat, he was all bluster and not much in the way of specifics. I think his charm will wear out, but I don't know. A lot of people said he won last night, depending on who you believe. I thought John Kasich, the Ohio governor, did a great job explaining why he decided to expand Medicaid under the Obamacare private option style expansion. He gave a great answer too, I think, when they asked what if one of his children turned out to be gay and they wanted to get married. Jeb Bush did a good job. He dealt with some tough issues, immigration, education standards, in ways that spoke well of him. I think to have me think you did well in the Republican primary debate is probably not a good thing for a Republican candidate, however. Marco Rubio was smooth. Scott Walker did okay. Both Rubio and Walker in saying that they were without exception in cases of abortion. Rubio said no, he wouldn't allow an abortion for a woman who'd been raped or was a victim of incest. Scott Walker said amazingly that no, he wouldn't allow an abortion to save a woman's life. These seem extreme to me. Mike Huckabee was in the shadows most of the night, although he's proclaimed on social media today that he won. I think how well a candidate did seemed to track pretty closely with how much you like that particular candidate. There'll be a lot more of these to come. I urge you to go to the Arkansas blog today and read David Ramsey's extensive explanation of this growing scandal that is the fact that 50,000 people are going to be dropped from the Medicaid coverage in Arkansas because of a terribly flawed, inefficient, bureaucratic snafu in checking income eligibility. David's been away for 5 weeks and he's caught up yesterday in fine fashion. People are getting letters that they don't recognize. They're getting them after the deadline date. They're getting too short a deadline to reply to these letters. The state has set an unreasonable trigger for when they ask people for income eligibility information. If there's a 10% change in your income, even downward, they ask you to prove what your income is. Of course, if your income has gone down, you are still eligible for Medicaid if you were to begin with. It's a mess. The governor won't change things. There is no need for a 10-day limit like we've enforced here, unlike any other state in the country. David explained it well. I urge you to take a look. Yesterday, the Attorney General approved a proposed constitutional amendment to shorten term limits in Arkansas. It would be on the 2016 ballot only 2 years after voters lengthened term limits. This is a reaction to how the Republican majority has used this to solidify power, to increase their pay, to increase their perks from lobbyists. The small government Tea Party crowd is coming back with a stronger term limits amendment to allow a legislator to serve only 10 years and not a bit more. They can now serve as many as 20 depending on how terms fall in the Senate. I was interested to read in the Democrat Gazette this morning that Senator Jon Woods, who was the architect of this tricky ethics amendment that wasn't very ethics at all, saying he just cannot believe that they'd come back and ask for a change of something approved so recently. This is the same senator who 2 months after the ethics amendment was approved by voters in November was back with a new amendment to that legislation that allowed lobbyists to follow legislators out to out-of-state conferences and feed them steaks in what otherwise would be violation of the so-called new ethics amendment. Some hypocrite he is. Elsewhere in Mississippi, there's been a funny story. An over-the-road truck driver named Robert Gray won a three-way race for the Democratic gubernatorial nomination without a runoff, beat a lawyer that had some money and an OBGYN. Nobody had heard of him. His family didn't know he was running. He didn't vote for himself. Too busy in Jackson that day to vote, he said. Nobody really knows why this happened. Maybe he was at the top of the ballot. The other candidates were women. Maybe Democrats in Mississippi don't like women. Who knows? But it raised for me the problem that at least they have a candidate. He may be a nobody, but he's not nobody at all. In Arkansas, the ballot opens in November. As yet, there's not a Democrat who's sent up any interest in running for Congress or U.S. Senate. There's not been a lot of talk about challenges to sitting Republicans in state legislative races. As I say, somebody is better than nobody, and Arkansas may look worse than Mississippi before it's all over with. Conway police promised later today, check my blog to see what happens, some information on that double murder case. They've been holding a teenager in connection with the death of two people who'd acted as his guardians. No charges yet. Perhaps more is going to come on that today. Some other teenagers are also in custody in relation to the case. For reading, I'd again urge you to go back to the Arkansas blog, find my link to a story that was in Vox. It was by a molecular biologist who worked for 10 years for a major scientific corporation doing fetal research, doing groundbreaking research that led to some important advances in treatment of breast cancer. Fetal research, fetal tissue research is an emotional issue. It's been used to great advantage against Planned Parenthood recently. Some people are against it in all circumstances, and that's one point of view. But I think that the current controversy is overlooking the great need and the great advances and the great things that come from this research. Which type are we going to allow? Which type are we not going to allow? It's a much more complicated topic sometimes, I think, than the opponents of Planned Parenthood want you to think about. This is an article by a writer who is tormented by some of these decisions, by the way, but who says in the end he would continue to do this kind of research because of what it produces. And finally, back to the restaurant beat again. I gave you a review earlier this week. Here's a scrap of restaurant news for people who eat downtown a lot. Soulfish, a Memphis restaurant known for its fried catfish and all kinds of southern vegetables, is apparently taking out a lease on the old Dundee store on Main Street between 3rd and 4th, and so we got more good eats coming our way in downtown Little Rock. I'm always for that. It's Friday. I'm heading home. I'm Max Brantley. Be back next week.